So we'll build systems of computers. Truth of the matter is, it's already happening. I have one chip here. The chip is made by Hughes. The system's being built by Goodyear Aerospace for NASA. This particular chip has 8 processors on it. They're lined up 4 and 4. You may want to look at it afterwards. I'll have it here. There are 8 processors on that chip. The system consists of 128 by 128 processors. 16,384 processors all in one system. They call it the multiple parallel processor. Now, of course, you might think that's going to fill a room like Mark I did. Not at all. All the processors are in one cabinet. Second cabinet holds all the input, output, and controls. Third cabinet is a PDP 1134, because obviously you have to have a computer if you're going to manage 16,000 computers. Each pixel from a Landsat photograph will go to one processor. Pixel includes position, color, intensity, everything else that you know about that pixel, and can communicate with the surrounding pixels. It's to be used to hunt for oil and minerals and stuff like that there. The other chip I have here is the first I've managed to get my hands on of the very large-scale integration. I have no doubt that there are more of them in some of our classified things in weapon systems, but this one's out in the open. 3 of these chips form the micro mainframe. 3 chips to form a mainframe computer. When you look at it, you'll find that the microprocessor is just one of the processors on this. It has built-in multi-programming, all the other fancy things. The micro mainframe. We're beginning to be able to build systems of computers. And the sooner we start doing it, the better we can respond to the need for rapid response and rapid development of things. Now, we're not going to get there overnight. We can't suddenly throw out all of our big dinosaurs and replace them with systems of computers. It'll have to be a step-by-step procedure. I'd like to show you something about how we can get at this sort of concept. This is my horrible example. It's a DOD system, not Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, DOD. That's different. They went out and bought themselves a 256K computer. And of course, they were going to put great big problems on it. Along came the manufacturer and said, you can't run that thing without an operating system. So they loaded in an operating system, of which 35K is resident at all times. The rest out on disk, you call it in when you need it. Well, they didn't want it to take naps or rest, so they said we better multi-program it. So in went a multi-programming system, of which 28K is resident at all times. Some of you may recognize which computer this is, but don't mention it out loud. It's a rather well-known one. Then they wanted to hang terminals on it so they could ask questions and put in programs, so they had to have time sharing. 35K plus 2K for each of 6 terminals, for a total of 47K for time sharing. Then they wanted communications. They wanted to talk telephone lines, so that was 10K, not too bad. Then they had to have security. So far, we are doing very, very badly on the score of security. We're doing a very poor job, not only in government, but in industry, at protecting valuable information and protecting against fraud and theft. I think mostly people forget how many reasons there are for security. First, of course, there's national security, but we'll leave that to you and the Department of Defense. There's company security, company confidential information that has to be protected. Do you realize there have already been cases where companies have listened to each other's microwave when they were bidding competitively on projects? That's not only not very nice, it's illegal. Then there's the question of personal security, personal information. You realize there have already been cases where people accessed personal information and used it to blackmail people? That is also illegal. And then there's fraud and theft. And regrettably, it's increasing. I lecture in the white collar and computer crime course down at the FBI Academy. I asked them if they had a message they wanted me to give people, and I've been spreading it all around the country. They said, please tell people if their system is broken, let us know. We've got to know what's happening. They showed me the case. A man in a bank, an officer of a bank, stole a large amount of money using the computer. He was discovered and he was fired. But the bank didn't want the stockholders and depositors to know they'd lost all that money, so they covered it up. So he threatened to go to the newspapers unless they gave him a letter of recommendation. And they did. He went to a second bank. He stole a large amount of money. It was discovered, he was fired, and he blackmailed him for a letter of recommendation. It wasn't until he got to the third bank that it was reported to the FBI, as it should have been in the very beginning. The failure to report was very, very costly. They also showed me another case. We haven't been telling our youngsters that it is not funny to use other people's computer time and to erase other people's data. A youngster out in Kansas City broke the network of a software house that was providing services to other companies. He got tired of playing with it, so he sent a message through the network to the managers of the network. And he said, I have all of your access codes, and he listed them. I have all of your personal ID codes, and he listed them and who they belong to. Then he said, I'll tell you how I did it, and I'll promise never to do it again if you'll give me a red Chevette equipped with a radio telephone and please fill it with gasoline. The FBI got him. Then there was the case, it was in the Washington, New York papers. Canada Cement Lafarge found that someone was not only using their computer but wiping out their data. So they called in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Bell of Canada, and the calls were traced to the border. They called in the FBI and Mother Bell, and the calls were traced to the Dalton School in New York City. The offenders turned out to be 4 12-year-old boys, now known as the Dalton Gang. So I said to the FBI, well, what are you going to do with all these youngsters? And they muttered about juvenile delinquents. I said, oh, don't do that. Make them work for us. They might be able to make the worldwide military command and control system work. Certainly throughout industry, I have found major difficulties in security. I was tickled to pieces with a New England insurance company out in Portland, Maine. They looked at their data, and they said, hey, we've got 2 databases here, not one big one. All of this information deals with our policyholders. This information deals with how we run our company. We need 2 database machines, which have different classifications, so to speak. People are beginning to look at the data and how you're going to protect it. But so far, well, this system has been broken about every 2 weeks or so, so the security is still growing, 17K for security. Then we're all lemmings in this business. If anybody has something, we all have to have it, so of course they had to have a database management system. In went a database management system, 23K. For a total of 160K of overhead, pure overhead. That minor earthquake they had up in New England did not come from the Laurentian Fault. When my sainted Scots grandfather heard about this, he rolled over in his grave. 160K for overhead. I left them with 96K to put their programs in. But they couldn't run a 96K program because they were multi-programming, so they had to have at least 3 partitions in there. Programmers are limited to 32K per program, and ain't that ducky. You buy a 256K computer, you can write a 32K program. Have you looked at your overhead lately? Let's get rid of it. Let's start building a system of computers. Let's put in one microcomputer and have it handle all internal consoles and security, another one and have it handle all external consoles and security. Now I've begun to protect my system. This is my operating system. If I can access your operating system, I'll break your system. If you want to know how to do it, I'll tell you too afterwards. Now I put micros out front. A terminal calls in. The micro asks for the ID of the person operating the terminal. You give it. The micro breaks the connection and calls back the terminal on which that ID is legal. Now why go through a callback procedure? Look at those kids calling in. They got the telephone number of Canada Cement Lafarge. They called in. The microcomputer asks for an ID. You give an ID. Now it's either you either borrowed, stolen, copied, or bought someone's ID, and all those have already occurred. You give it. Micro breaks the connection. It'll never call back the illegal terminal. And short of piggybacking or an actual wiring within the building, you don't get over that. It has another advantage in that either the micro or the mainframe can change the number of the terminal number, so that you may know your access number, but you do not know the number assigned to your terminal because it may have been changed 2 minutes ago. And it's a fairly good way. I wish more of the banks were using it, the callback procedure, because it's much easier to keep people out of a system to begin with than it is to get them out after they've gotten in. Now let's put a third micro in and have it handle the database. Database manager. That concept has a long and interesting history and is a good example of the way we do not accept new ideas. It was first proposed by Bell Labs in 1972, and they showed that a back-end computer went faster and cost less to manage the data. Nobody paid any attention. In 1974, they published a paper, Back-End Computer for Database Management. I can't believe people read it. Nobody did anything about it. Usually we listen to Bell Labs. 1977, the Army, working with Kansas State University in Cullinan, put a back-end computer for database management. Showed it went faster and cost less, but even they're not doing it. 3 years ago at the National Computer Conference at Anaheim, they showed the first of the database machines, a machine built to do database management. It's not a computer, it doesn't compute, except to count one once in a while, a database manager. People didn't pay attention. Finally, this year, 10 years after we first latched onto the idea, the Navy's putting a database machine in at Point Mugu. And I have a paper here by Frank Malabarba, Database Machines, It's About Time. I can't understand why it's taken us so long to realize that a better specialized machine to handle database was always going to go faster than a general purpose machine. Plus the fact that the minute you go to database machines, you can have more than one database. And in a Navy installation, we could have one database which was highly classified and another one which was open. And it means that more than one computer can access the database. So the concept of database machine is very much at the heart of building the systems of computers of the future and the concept of multiple databases. And that was why I was so happy with that New England insurance company that recognized that right in front of them there was clearly two separate databases, one for the insured and one for their own company. And if we look at our data, we'll find in most cases that it does break down pretty clearly. After all, there was never any reason why we put inventory and payroll on the same computer. The only reason we did was because we only had one computer. Now we've got to overcome that concept and realize those can be on separate computers. And of course, the minute we get to systems of computers, we don't go down anymore, which is another important point. Now I can put 3 more computers in here, 4, 5, and 6, to run those 3 problems that I wanted to run. They'll run in parallel instead of sequentially under multi-programming. And today they can be 64K micro instead of 32K. Next week, of course, they'll be 256K or something. I can put another micro in so they can all talk to each other. It'll cost me less than 1/3 what the big system did. So the sooner I move to systems of computers, the faster I'm going to go, the better security I'll have, and the less it'll cost me. All good reasons for moving toward systems of computers. But it won't happen overnight. Only recently have we persuaded our admiral to send out the order to all of the Nordacs. Identify the first system you're going to pull off and put on a separate computer. Maybe by the time our big mainframes are about to pass out, we will have begun to get our things into a system of computers. It means looking ahead. It means planning ahead. And it's going to take us the next 5 to 10 years to get there. And it's awfully hard to get somebody to do it on their watch when the payoff will not come this year. But we've got to begin to look ahead and plan for the systems of computers of the future. And I hope at least one of you will get a set of those nice gadgets they use in chemistry and start constructing a system of computers. And you can even have different kinds of bonds between them, one of which you know is classified, the other's not, and so on and so forth. I think you'll have lots of fun starting to design the systems of computers of the future. Well, so far I've talked only about data and hardware. We've got to do something about software. One of the big cries today is that software costs too much and you can't maintain it. Combination of a proof by Dr. Haney and my crew, we developed a technique which has paid off in a rather big way, particularly from the point of view of maintaining a system. Now, Dr. Haney proved something rather interesting. you may want to repeat it to your programmers. It's very good for them. Programmers tend to believe something that's mathematical. So if you can get a mathematical proof, they're much more apt to believe it than all the orders in creation. Dr. Haney said, suppose I have a piece of a program and I make a change in it. Do I have enough programmers here to know what happens when you do that? You probably have to make another change. The darn things ripple. All right, he said, let P be the probability that if I make a change, it causes another change. Then he said, I'd like to know, on the average, how many changes do I have to make as a result of that first change? Well, that's the expected value. The statisticians have told us how to compute it. E is the first change, plus the second change times the probability that I have to make it, P. But sometimes the second change causes a third change, P squared. Sometimes a third causes a fourth, P cubed. It's the infinite series. But probability is always 1 or less. So the mathematicians have told me that in that case, the sum of that series is 1 over 1 minus P. So if I have some real good applications programmers, if the chances if they make a change is going to be 1 in 10 that they'll have to make another change, this becomes 1 over 1 minus a tenth, 1 over 9 tenths, 1.111111, which looks like something I can live with. But I practically never have a system which consists of only one module. So now let's have another module. And now I'll behave like a normal mathematician. This is the ith module, and this is the jth module. And now Pij is the probability that if I make a change in the ith module, it'll cause a change in the jth module. I change something in the selector, it upsets the I/O. Now I'd like to know how many changes do I expect to make as a result of that first change? Now, incidentally, we've run into that more than once. I've known cases where they made one change, it caused 30 changes, that caused about 500 changes, and at that point they decided they better throw it away and start over again. In this case, Dr. Haney's proof shows that in this case, the expected value turns out to be 1 over 1 minus NP, where P is the probability that a change in one module will cause a change in another one, and N's the number of modules. Now let N, suppose I have 100 modules in this system. It's an operating system or a database management system or a great big application. And now I have systems programmers, who are much better, of course, than applications programmers. So now the probability that they make a change, it's going to cause another change, is 1 in 100. How many changes will I expect to make as a result of that first change? This should be a minus sign, I'm sorry. 1 over 1 minus 100 times 100th is 1, which is 1 over 0, which is infinity, and the system will not stabilize. We've been awful close to that point. You can probably all remember cases where we changed something in the I/O, and a week later the whole system blew up, and you didn't know where it started from. Is there an answer to it? And the answer is yes, there is. That is to make all of the Pij's 0. Well, what's that mean? It means you write the system in independent modules. Modules such they have one entrance point and one exit point. And no module ever accesses the interior of any other module. Never touches it. And the way you exchange data between the modules is through a series of interfaces. This module puts something down, another module picks it up. I asked my crew to build me a COBOL compiler for the 8K ruggedized Nova. Of course, everybody knew you couldn't do that, but they did. I asked them to build it entirely in independent modules, and they developed a technique which I found extremely useful, and so did they. They had a microcomputer. They kept all of the modules on the microcomputer as a file. So anytime anybody wanted to look at one of the independent modules, he could call it up and look at it. They also kept a file of the interfaces. By the number of the interface, the contents of the interface, and who was in charge of the interface, followed by a list of the other modules and who was in charge of it. So if anybody wanted to change an interface, he could immediately find out who he had to check with before he could change that interface. And they didn't have that awful case if you change something over here and it blows up over here next week. They had the modules themselves and the interfaces completely under control. They were in the microcomputer, and at any given moment, any one of them could look at them. And one second-class petty officer, 2 third-class, and 1 seaman, in 4 months' time, built a COBOL compiler. That's normally 2 years. They did a magnificent job. And part of it, I think, was the fact that they had the file of the modules and the interfaces to work with. Also, when they were transferred and a new group came in, the documentation was complete for them to add to it, to change it, because any module could be pulled out without affecting any other module. All you had to check were those interfaces. And there was a complete record of those interfaces. So maybe there's something we can think about toward easier building of systems of software and of managing not only the software development itself, but also the maintenance. Well, it finally got to be 1966, and I got a letter from the Chief of Naval Personnel. And the first paragraph said, "You have completed 23 years in the reserves, which is more than 20. And I knew that. The second paragraph was also aimed right at me. It said, "You have attained age 60. I knew that, too. The third paragraph said, "Here are the blanks. Please apply for retirement." So I did. And I was officially placed on the Naval Reserve retired list with the rank of commander on the 31st of December, 1966, the saddest day of my life. I left out one thing. Going back to that course I had from the War College, the second review I was to review the cost of not doing something. Now, we did that for all the islands. We looked at the cost in men and material of taking an island. Then we looked at the consequences of bypassing the island. And some we took, like Saipan and Tinian. Others we bypassed, like Truk. That study was always made. What is the cost of not doing this? I've long advocated the use of the standard high-level languages. And I'd go to one of our data processing installations and say, "Why aren't you using standard COBOL instead of all those bells and whistles the vendor gives you?" "Oh, we get a few extra bits and bytes," or something like that, or microseconds. I said, "Have you looked at the cost when you go to the next computer? Cost of conversion?" "Well, we'll think about that later." I finally decided that I had to find somebody that would really scare people. So I looked around Washington to see which agency really did scare people. And I decided it was the General Accounting Office. That's because they come and look at everything you're doing and then go tell Congress about it. So I went over to GAO and said, "Do you realize how much it's costing us not to use the standard high-level languages?" And they said no. They made a year-long study. The answer they came up with was rather interesting. They said that between that time and 1985, about 8,500 of the general management computers in the total federal inventory would be replaced. And furthermore, that the cost of conversion was running $450 million a year. $450 million a year down the drain simply because we had failed to implement the standards. Money we could have had for all the things we wanted to do, and far outweighed anything we saved by using the special bells and whistles that any vendor gave us. That was a case where most people totally failed to look at the cost of not doing something. They'd tell me that, oh, well, they couldn't possibly enforce the standards this year. They'd have to get new forms. They'd have to beat all the programmers over the head. They'd do the standards bit next year. And they wouldn't look at the cost of not using the standards. So that review goes right up along with the all possible enemy actions, the cost of not carrying out the action. Well, finally, they retired me on 31 December, '66. Thanks to our highly automated pension system, I got my first pension check on the 1st of April. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the Pentagon, "Come down to Washington, we want to talk to you." So I came a-running, as I always do when the Navy sends for me. I had to wait in Mr. Ream's outer office. There were 2 captains there. Naturally, since I was only a commander, I spoke to them very pleasantly and respectfully. However, inadvertently, I managed to tell those 2 men, "My, aren't the captains young nowadays?" One of them turned out to be my new commanding officer, so I started on the right foot. Mr. Ream took one look at me and said, "The Navy payroll's been written 823 times. This has got to stop." So naturally, I said, "Yes, sir." It ended up he asked me to return to active duty with a job of standardizing the high-level languages and getting the whole Navy to use them. I noticed how the first half of that job was finite. The second was infinite. But I'd be very glad to make a start on it. And so I reported on the 1st of August, 1967, on 6 months temporary active duty. And so far, it is the longest 6 months I've ever spent in my entire life. As for Navy personnel, they gave me 2 Navy men, DP3s, a civilian and a secretary, an office in the 5th deck of the Pentagon. That's the attic, slant roof, escalators go to the 4th deck, and you hike to the 5th. They gave us each a desk and a chair and a pad and a pencil. Standardize the high-level languages, start with COBOL. No cards, no tapes, no computer, and no budget. Well, since I was initiating a new Navy activity, the first thing I did was go out and buy a coffee urn. The second thing I did was teach my new crew the things the chief had taught me during World War II. And I'd like to assure you that our new Navy men and women are just as good as any World War II man ever was. It only took them 2 weeks to completely furnish the office. The only day we nearly got in trouble, they turned up with a coffee table like they have down in the secretary's office. The captain took one look at it and said, "Where'd you get that?" But I remembered what to do. I just stood perfectly straight and said, "Captain, it wasn't bolted down." So that became one of our mottos: if it isn't bolted down, bring it home. In fact, we did so well that the junior officers at Nav Cossack eventually gave us our own flag. It's a beautiful nylon boat flag with grommets and everything on a pole beside my desk. And it's a skull and crossbones. And to the best of my knowledge, we were the only office ever in the entire Pentagon to openly fly the Jolly Roger and operate under its aegis. Of course, I also taught my crew that when we go out to get something, always liberate from the Air Force first, because they have everything and don't know how much they got. Second, if you can't get it that way, try the Army, because they have almost everything and they can't count. And there's no use trying to liberate anything from the Seabees or the Marines, because they liberated it to begin with. We survived, one way or another, on no budget. We had no money to buy computer time. We lived on the slack in the Pentagon computers. No good chief operator will ever schedule a computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He leaves 5 minutes here, 10 there, 15 there for the things that happen when you operate systems of computers. If he didn't need his slack time, my crew made friends with every chief operator of the Pentagon. I never knew how they got in some places, and I didn't ask. They'd call us and say, "Can you use 5 minutes? Can you use 10 minutes?" That meant our programs had to run on anybody's computer, because everybody knew you couldn't do that. Except my crew didn't know you couldn't do that. One third-class petty officer wrote a program, low-level COBOL. It asks you which computer you're on. You can say anything from Apple to Amdahl, 370, 3500, whatever you got your hands on. And as it enters the remainder of the program, it enters the control cards and special names, and you run that computer. And you can write programs that'll run on anybody's computer. And the entire sets of test routines for both COBOL and Fortran compilers have been run on everybody's computers. There's no excuse for not writing programs that are portable. Well, that solved our problem of computer time. And we began to develop the test routines, first for COBOL, later for Fortran. 2.5 years later, I was invited to give a presentation for the Secretary of the Navy. It was going to be the Secretary of the Navy, Assistant Secretary, Chief of Naval Operations, Chief of Naval Materiel, all the Vice Admirals. Oh, they rehearsed me for 2 weeks ahead of time. I went through one dry run after another till I was letter perfect. We finally got to the great morning, and I was walking down the corridor beside the executive corridor beside the captain. He looks down at me and says, "First time a woman ever gave a presentation in that room." That was so I'd feel more at ease, more comfortable. He let me get about 10 feet further, and he says, "First time anybody below the rank of captain ever gave a presentation in that room." He had me in good shape when I got there. So the first thing I did was break from the speech and tell the secretary it was just as well we hadn't had a budget. Because if we had had one, I'd still be filling out the papers to get our first hour of computer time. But I managed to get through to the end, and he was a charming gentleman. He thanked me, he congratulated me, and then he said, "Is there anything we can do to help you?" Now, I hadn't been briefed on how to respond to that question, so naturally I waded right in and said, yes, I wanted 2 more DPs, 2 more programmers, and $20,000 to survey the users of COBOL to find out what they needed next. He said he'd see what he could do about it, and that whole room collapsed in one roar of laughter. Boy, did I get out the door. I looked at the captain and said, "Well, what did I do this time?" He said, don't you realize nobody ever asked for less than 20 million in that room before? So we got 2 more DPs and $20,000, only to run into a major problem with our DPs in the Pentagon. We found there was a large number of civilians and even some officers who were not about to listen to a young man or woman who wore a sailor suit. It got so bad that the captain finally said, we will have to take them out of uniform. I don't think I ever regretted anything more than the day I had to tell those youngsters, take off your uniforms so that people will listen to you. I tried to make up for it. I personally paid for having cards printed for each one of them with a Navy seal on it, and I made them all managers. Mr. George N. Baird, manager, test, and evaluation. Boy, that had a marvelous effect on the civilians. They're very respectful of managers. It even had a good effect on some of the officers, particularly Army. I find we have a very bad habit of underestimating our young people. I think we totally fail to recognize how much more they know than we knew at the same age. I can make the comparison. They've had radio and television all their lives long for both information and misinformation. I didn't have a radio set till I was a senior in high school. I built a crystal set. I didn't have a vacuum tube set till I was a senior in college. That was the year the superheterodyne circuit first came out. I knew man would never walk on the moon. They know he has. They know all about jet airplanes. They can't remember their first flight in an airplane. They were taken on a jet to visit their grandparents when they were babies. I didn't fly in an airplane till I was a sophomore in college. I spent $10, and that was a heck of a lot of money in 1925. I went up in an open cockpit biplane built out of wood and linen and wire. And it went up about 150 feet and floated along about 80 miles an hour. I'd be scared to death to go near it today. They know all about jets. I was reminded of this not long ago, because I was walking out to take Allegheny's itty-bitty commuter flight from Washington to Philadelphia. I guess it's Ransom Airlines now. And there was a young man beside me. He was looking up at that plane. Finally, he turned to me and he said, is that thing safe? And I said, yeah, why not? He said, I've never flown in a prop plane before. We have a whole generation that's never flown in prop planes. We've totally forgotten how much more they know than we knew at the same age. On the other hand, they're no more mature than we were at the same age. And they're looking for something which they cannot always put in words. And I've seen it across the country as I've talked at schools and colleges and to our young people. What they're looking for is positive leadership. I mean leadership in the old Navy sense. It's a two-way street. It's loyalty up and loyalty down. It's respect for your superior and keep him informed of what you're up to, and take care of your crew. We've forgotten that. We think leadership only comes from some guy up there at the top. It's everybody's job. It's everybody's job to take care of their crew. For example, I decided that the youngsters coming through my group, that every one of them should be able to get on his feet and give a report and not once say, you know. So I put a little square box on their desk with a slot in it, and if they said, you know, during a report, they had to put a quarter in. Now, we didn't take the quarters, but it tied up their capital. And you'd be surprised how fast they learned not to say, you know. I also decided that every one of them must be able to write a report and correct English statements and spell all the words correctly. I bought 5 dictionaries. It also meant a lot of extra time for me with the red ink at nights and weekends, and then explaining for the changes. Yet before they left, every single one of those 50 or so youngsters was able to give orally and in writing a correct report in good English and spell all the words correctly. I think we forget that the 4- and 5-year-olds are learning arithmetic, the little professor. The 6-year-olds are getting speak and spell. You better look out, there's going to be a generation coming that'll know how to spell. The 7-year-olds, of course, are learning basic, running the computers. I know one man that bought a computer and took it home. His son is teaching him basic. His son's 7. Of course, I know another guy that took a computer home. Now he has to apply to his 3 children for computer time. They're tremendously bright, and they're out there, the brightest youngsters we have ever had. Now, they're not coming from the 2 coasts and the big cities. They're coming from farm country where they still believe you have to work to earn something and work to learn something. North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Nebraska, Kansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, West Texas. They're coming from out there in the farm country where they still have good schools. And they still believe you have to work to learn something. They're out there, the brightest we have ever had. And yet somewhere in the last 30 years, we lost that word leadership. We went overboard for management, partly under the influence of Mr. McNamara, partly under the business schools. We concentrated on this quarter's bottom line, this year's fitness report. We forgot to look ahead for the next 5 years for any enterprise. And we lost that concept of leadership. Loyalty up and loyalty down. It's the one thing those youngsters are looking for. You can't do it all by management. If I had a Marine standing here beside me, what he would say would be, when the going gets rough, you cannot manage a man into combat. You must lead him. And I think he would further add, you manage things, you lead people. We need to bring that back very badly, not only in the armed forces, but in all of government, throughout business and industry. It's the one thing that those youngsters are really looking for, good, positive leadership. Well, eventually, the test routines were successful. The order went out which said all compilers brought into the inventory of the Department of Defense should be tested. You Navy shall set up a compiler testing service, which was done, and we started testing all Fortran and COBOL compilers for the Department of Defense. That left the rest of the federal government to worry about. National Bureau of Standards came and got a copy of our programs. We were glad to share them until 2 weeks later. Our programs had been printing out at the top of every page of every report, U.S. Navy compiler test. I found them loose in Washington, and they were printing out NBS compiler test, and boy, was I mad. They came around and wanted a new updated set of the programs, and I said I wouldn't give them one. I was promptly told that politically I must cooperate with the National Bureau of Standards. So I thought it over for 2 whole days. And I finally gave them a new set of the programs, and as I did, I promised them, if they again attempted to change U.S. Navy into NBS, it would blow their operating system off their computer. Well, eventually we held a peace conference and exchanged our prisoners of war. And the National Bureau of Standards delegated to the Navy the job of testing all COBOL and Fortran compilers for the entire federal government. That continued till about 2.5 years ago. At that time, the Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives made a horrifying discovery. They discovered, to their horror, that the Navy was performing a federal function. In their completely horrified state, they picked the compiler testing service out of the Navy and put it over in the General Services Administration. Now, I might be real worried about them over there, except I trained them all. They're all ex-Navy. I think they're doing all right. Since they got over there, they've gotten all new offices, all new furniture, and 2 new computers. Every 3 months, they put out a certified compiler list, which lists all compilers which have been tested and certified to meet the ANSI specifications, all the way from Apple to Amdahl and everything in between. And there is a COBOL for Apple, and it has passed the standards test. For both COBOL and Fortran, they're all listed, and you can even get the details of the test. Most of them cost around $8 or $9 for the complete details of the test of any given compiler. So, at last, we're beginning to be able to implement the standard high-level languages. I'm tremendously proud of what those youngsters have accomplished. 2 of them received the Navy Achievement Award for leading the development of those test routines. One received the Navy Achievement Award for leading the development of the COBOL compiler for the 8K ruggedized Nova. We're particularly proud of one member of the group. She finished her courses. She was a 2nd-class petty officer, so we shipped her off to OCS. She's now in a cruise missile installation in Germany, a lieutenant, and she has just been selected to attend the Naval Postgraduate School. For myself, I've probably spent the busiest, most exciting, most challenging, and most interesting 15 years I've ever spent in my entire life, and I've loved every single minute of it. I've also received most of the honors that are given to anyone in the computer industry. Each time I've received one, I've thanked them, and then I've told them something I'd like to repeat to you. I have already received the highest award I will ever receive, no matter how long I live, no matter how many more jobs I may have. And that has been the privilege and the responsibility of serving very proudly in the United States Navy. Thank you all, and don't forget to get a nanosecond.